This video is going to walk you through section 37A in your textbook, which is page 180 through 182. Mostly we're going to spend this segment talking about setting off long quotations, but we will also talk a little bit about using the ellipses to omit quoted material and using the brackets to insert your own words into quoted material. So make sure you've read through these pages first. Section 37A begins by talking about limiting your use of quotations. This is an APA style guide. APA doesn't hate quotations, but it prefers that if you choose to quote material from a text, that it be especially important or especially powerfully written. If I were to give you a guideline, I would suggest one quote per page, maybe in an undergraduate paper, no more than 2 quotes per page. For other styles of writing, for instance, humanities writing that might be more concerned with the way something is written, breaking that down, quoting is often more encouraged. Now, in this class, again, you get to sort of work from where you are. So think about what your major is, and maybe do a little research on whether you'll be using APA or Chicago Turabian or MLA. The second section in 37A talks about using the ellipses. So the ellipses helps us condense a quoted passage. You may find that you really want to use this whole passage, but if you really think about it, you just need these 2 little snippets, what I call snippets, just a couple of words here, a couple of words there. You can actually use the ellipses mark to demonstrate that you've omitted from that passage. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. We never need the ellipses, which is those 3 dots in a row, 3 periods in a row. We never need them at the beginning or end of a quote, which is often something that first-year writers tend to do. But we don't need them because our reader is going to assume that we've cut or that we may have cut from the beginning or the end. Where it becomes important is if you cut something from the middle of a quote. We want to show our reader that we took something out because we want to prove to them that we're not trying to trick them into thinking the quote means something that it doesn't, so that they can go back to the original source and actually see, oh, okay, here's what they cut and here's why this part might not be as important. If we don't show them that, then it looks like we've been deceptive, that we're trying to make the quote fit what we are trying to say rather than us saying something about the quote as it is. So I'm going to show you an example of how you might use the ellipses mark. This is an article called "Why Johnny Can't Write and Why Employers Are Mad." It was published in 2013 by Kelly Holland. The basic premise is what you see in the title, that employees' communication skills, written and verbal, and especially written, just aren't up to par for employer expectations. You can read through this. All you have to do is just Google "Why Johnny Can't Write and Why Employers Are Mad." So let's see. I'm going to come down, and I'm gonna snag this quote right here. So I'm just gonna highlight it, and then I'm using a Mac, so I'm going to do Command-C to copy. But if you're using a PC, you can do Control-C, and that's going to copy it. And I'm going to come over here to my Word document, and I'm going to paste this. Let's see. Okay, perfect. All right, so the original quote reads, "On Friday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported there were a net 204,000 new jobs created in October, though the unemployment rate rose to 7.3%. The numbers easily topped economists' expectations of 120,000 new non-farm payroll jobs for the month." Okay, so that's our original quote. And actually what I'm going to do here is just to make it an actual quote. I'm going to add my quotation marks on either side, and I'm going to put a parenthetical citation at the end. Now, we will be continuing talking about parenthetical citations throughout the semester, but essentially I want my reader to know that Holland is the author and that the year it was published was 2013. I don't have a page number because this is a web source, so I don't need to include that page number. Okay, so there is my quote. So let's say I wanted to cut something from the beginning. I think probably what's most important is the number of new jobs, and then the new jobs number easily topped the economist's expectations. So I don't think I really need this unemployment rate. So let's say on Friday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported there were a net 240,000 new jobs created in October. And I'm gonna cut this, okay? But I have to show my reader two things. I have to show them, first of all, that was the end of a sentence, okay? So I'm gonna put my period. And then I need to show them that I removed something from that quote. So I'm going to have to use those 3 dots in a row. And your book shows this actually in that second example there. Okay, so there I have it. So I have my period for the end of the sentence, and then I have my ellipses. So now my quote reads, on Friday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported there were a net 204,000 new jobs created in October. The numbers easily topped economists' expectations of 120,000 new farm payroll jobs for the month. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, the only thing I want to change is I don't want this quote to be a standalone or what we call a dropped quote, which we'll talk about a little bit later too, which means that the whole sentence is a quote. So I'm going to actually introduce it. So I'm going to change my parenthetical citation. Holland 2013 noted that, okay, that makes me a little happier. So now I've introduced it with my author instead of putting my author at the end so that the quote isn't a standalone quote. So that shows you how you can use the ellipses to demonstrate that you cut something out of the middle of a quote. Now, the difference here is that we also had to indicate that it was the end of a sentence. So that's why we have 4 periods instead of 3. But if it were part of the same sentence, we would just use the 3 periods. And again, your book shows an example of that. Moving on, you can actually use an ellipses at the beginning if you cut something from the beginning of a sentence, but APA suggests that you only do that if it's really important that you let your reader know that there was more to the beginning of the sentence. So examples that I can think of would be perhaps like famous quotes. So let's just say, okay, William Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that is the question. That's actually from his play Hamlet. To be or not to be. And I'm not sure the punctuation there. I'll just say, maybe it's a comma. That is the question. And then I'm not going to get too technical. I'm just going to put Shakespeare so that we know it's him. Okay. So if I wanted to actually show that I was cutting part of this really important and really famous quote, I might say something like, Shakespeare lets his readers know that their, let's see, mental state of being, quote, is the question. So there, I just wanted to use that ellipses at the beginning because I wanted to show that I know that there's this whole famous quote, but I'm only using the end of it. And I sort of summarize what the beginning means here, this idea of whether the way that our mind is, the mental state that we're in. But again, you probably won't use that very often. So this is what I showed you in this first example, you're much more likely to use. Now, going back to the article and moving on in your textbook, using brackets allows you to do the opposite of ellipses. Whereas ellipses helps you condense a quoted passage or take something out of it, brackets allows you to insert your own words to clarify something or to make your quoted words fit grammatically into the context of your own sentence. And that second part comes in handy because APA generally preferences past tense. If you notice in my writing, I said that Holland noted. I said that, let's see, what did I say there? I said that Shakespeare, I said lets his readers know. Generally, we would write in the past tense though. So that can become really important to know that you can change a quote as long as you're not changing the meaning of it. And you have to use brackets to show that. So the book actually gives you their example of using brackets. And if you notice in that quote from Carmona about tobacco use, the bracket includes the words treating before tobacco use to indicate that the cost of treating obesity is second only to the cost of treating tobacco use. If the writer had not added treating there in brackets, then that sentence would actually read that the use of tobacco, so buying, purchasing, smoking, chewing, all of that is actually the number one cost in healthcare. But we want to make sure, the writer wanted to make sure that we understood that it was the treating of tobacco use, not the actual paying for tobacco use that was so expensive. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to go back to that same quote that I pulled from the Holland piece. And I'm going to show you how you, back in this first example, I'm going to erase the second one. I'm going to show you how you could use a bracket here. So Holland noted that on Friday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported there were a net 204,000 new jobs created in October. The numbers easily topped economist expectations of 120,000 new non-farm payroll jobs for the month. Well, I'm going to back it up. I'm using Command Z to undo everything that I've done because I want to get back to this original quote. Again, if you use PC, you can use Control Z and it will undo what you've done. Because I want to get rid of this ellipses. Okay, perfect. Now I'm back to my original quote. I don't necessarily want to delete the unemployment rate because I want my reader to know that, but I need to let them know that the number that I'm talking about right here is really more about these jobs and less about the unemployment rate. So I'm going to add a bracket right here. The new job numbers easily topped economist expectations of 120,000 new non-farm payroll jobs for the month. So you see where what I added in brackets, and actually because I have new down here, I probably don't need it twice. I can just probably say the job numbers. That indicates to my reader that I'm not talking about the unemployment rate numbers. I'm talking about the net new jobs created for that month numbers. So that's one way that you could use the bracket. Now, let's say that I wanted to, let's just say that I was writing my paper in present tense, and I wanted to change the verbs in here to be present tense to match that. I could do something like, I could change reported to report on Friday. And let's say I wanted to get rid of this. Oops. Not sorry. Get back. Okay. I think it's because I have a hyperlink in there. The Bureau of Labor Statistics report there were a net 204,000 new jobs. The job numbers easily top economist expectations. And let's say I want to cut that. Okay, so now what I've done, and it's probably not a really great job, but I have changed my past tense verbs to present tense verbs. Again, that might be if I'm writing in the present tense. Like I said, generally you'll be using the past tense in APA, so it'd be more likely that you would change something from the present tense to the past tense. But that shows you, again, how you can change something to match your writing, but that doesn't change the meaning of the sentence. So the last thing we're going to talk about, and this is the thing that you'll probably use the most from this segment, is setting off long quotations. So if you come across a quotation that's just absolutely amazing and you have to use it, and it's 40 words or longer, you're going to need to use a block quote for this, okay? So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to go back to my Why Johnny Can't Write. It's a great article. You should really read it. So I'm going to scroll down because I think this is pretty important. This is where we get to the good news, okay? Most of the article talks about how employees can't write and how this is a problem, but at the end, we actually get to some good news, okay? So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to move back to my Word document. I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to put my quotation marks around it, and I'm going to put my parenthetical at the end. Perfect. Okay. The good news for job seekers is that some companies are providing help with writing. Lasky estimates that Right Management is seeing an increase of 20 to 25% in the number of clients investing in career development for employees, including improving their communication skills. Okay, excellent. So again, that's a dropped quote because the whole sentence is a quote, and we don't want a dropped quote. So I'm actually going to take out Holland. I'm going to move Holland. Oops. I'm going to move Holland to the front. So Holland stated, let's see, I'm going to change this a little bit. Although Holland's 2013 article presented, see there's that past tense, a dismal view of the writing skills of modern employees, she shares some shreds of hope. Okay. Now, one thing I don't like about what I just did is I just gendered our author. Her name is, what is her name? Kelly Holland. Kelly sounds like it's a woman's name. I could probably Google her to find out if she identified as a woman or not. But you know what? There's a better way. I can just not gender her, and I can just say, although the article presented a dismal view of the writing skills of modern employees, the author, and I want that past tense again, the author shared some shreds of hope. Now notice I ended this complete sentence with a colon. If you're going to set off a long quotation, that's what I want you to do. I want you to write a complete sentence that introduces this idea, followed by a colon. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bump this to the next line. I want to delete that space. We're going to highlight this whole quote. This is our block quote. And we're going to go up here and we're going to drag this to 1/2 inch. MLA has a little bit, sorry, not this one, this bottom one. The bottom rectangle goes to 1/2. Oh, yeah, okay, perfect. MLA has slightly different guidelines. If you're used to them, you've probably been using 1 inch, but for APA, it's 1/2 inch. Now, once we do this, this is nice, but we have to get rid of the quotation marks because block quotes don't use quotation marks. And remember how we took Holland out because we didn't want to gender her or him, and we just really weren't sure how they identified. So I'm going to add that here. Now notice that instead of the period being outside, the parenthetical like it was previously, it is now inside at the end of the sentence, and the parenthetical is outside. So that looks pretty good. So I have a full sentence, a complete sentence, followed by a colon introducing my quote. Then I have my quote, and it is 40 words or longer. And the way I know that is by going to, at least for a Word for Mac, I go to review and I can do word count. Look, that's 45 words. So I know that I have to set that off. And then I have my parenthetical. Very nice. So what I need to do now is just one more thing. I need to double space. So of course I can go to the spacing here, or I can just do Command 2 or Control 2, depending on the project or the program that I'm using. So that you will actually use a lot. So it's really important that you get that right. It's also one of those errors that is really easy to fix, but it sticks out like a sore thumb if you have a paper that is misusing block quotes. So if you use Google Docs, there will be a supplemental video that's going to show you how to do it in Google Docs because it's a little bit tricky. But that concludes this segment of using the ellipses, the brackets, and setting off long quotations.